What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from Audio from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video and back with another Trooper format video. And this is actually going to be my last Trooper format video for the main coverage of the format. I know that people have enjoyed this format quite a bit, but I also know that people are getting a little bit tired of it and want to move on to the next one, which will be Zombie format, very similar to Perfect Circle. So if you like Perfect Circle, stick around for that one because it should be a lot of fun. But I wanted to sort of show off this format with a bang here at the end. And so I saved, well, not the best deck for last, but a pretty fun deck for last, and that is Volcanics. Now, Volcanics aren't really a deck, they're more of an engine. Basically, you have Volcanic Rocket, which can search out a Blaze Accelerator on normal summon. It's kind of like Sapphire Pegasus and Stratos, just monsters that are pretty strong on their own, and when you normal summon them out, they get some immediate value. In the case of Rocket, it is Blaze Accelerator, and the nice thing about Rocket is that it can actually add Blaze Accelerator back from graveyard as well, so you only really need to play one copy of Blaze Accelerator. The downside is if your opponent's playing a DD Crow and they DD Crow the Blaze Accelerator, that's a bit annoying for you. I do think it's ultimately still better to just play one rather than two, although if you want more deck thinning, you can do that. But the thing is, you can't search out Volcanic Rocket from the deck, so I think it sort of like balances itself out a little bit. So I'd rather just play Triple Rocket, one Accelerator, and hope that that's enough. Now, Blade Accelerator is a pretty powerful continuous spell. It lets you pop an opponent's monster by pitching a Pyro monster 500 less attack from your hand. And you can't attack that turn, but you can use effect multiple times per turn. And you can actually get multiple Pyro monsters like that into your hand with Volcanic Shell. This is a level 1 Pyro, 100 attack, 0 defense. It's 1 per turn. You can pay 500 life points, add 1 Volcanic Shell from your deck to your hand. This card must be in the graveyard to activate and resolve this effect. So basically, if you pitch a shell, you get to search out another shell and do the whole tango over again. This is a very, very fun deck. It also fuels Pot of Avarice very well because if you get a bunch of shells in the graveyard, you can then Pot of Avarice, send those shells back into your deck, and then use their effects again to search out more. So very, very neat deck, or at least engine that is. And there are a couple different strategies you can slot this in. I like slotting it into Monarchs. I mean, this was a deck in the past, Volcanic Monarch. And it makes sense because you do have one normal summon, which is Volcanic Rocket, sure. But other than that, you don't really need to be normal summoning a whole ton. So the Monarchs serve as your other normal summon and can get some powerful effects off once you've popped your opponent's monsters. Also, that's close to the Pyro, so that's kind of funny as well. I was thinking about like putting Rivalry in this deck, but I realized that it probably wouldn't really be the best here. Yeah, I mean, it's something you could do if you want to, though. So maybe that's an idea for the future, but if you do that, you can't really play Ryza, which is the most powerful Monarch in this format, and one of the main reasons to play Monarch decks in this format, because spinning back a card to the top of your opponent's deck is very, very good. Now, we have the typical Monarch extension. You know, we got triple Grave Pure Spy, we got triple Cyber Dragon as well. These things can make it so that you can get an easy Monarch normal summon out. Same with Reaper here. And we've got Sangan to search out for the Spirit Reaper. And, you know, also if we tribute this for a Monarch, we get a search as well for like a Shell or something like that. So we've got a lot of good tributes for the Monarchs. We also have the Spirit of Flame here, which can be used as further extension. It lets you banish a fire monster from your graveyard to bring this out. It does gain 300 attack during your battle phase only, so it's like a 2000 beater during your battle phase. But the main reason you're bringing this out is either for extra damage when you can go for a big damage push, or to just serve as a tribute fodder for your Monarchs. So I like this deck a fair bit. I also put in a Volcanic Slicer because it fits the sort of like volcanic theming of the deck. This card probably isn't really that good. You can probably cut it in the future, but I wanted to play as many of the decent volcanic monsters as possible, and this is definitely a decent one here. For the rest of the spells, we got a Book of Moon, a Confiscation here to rip out parts of our opponent's hand. We got MST to deal with their back row, Pot of Avarice, as I mentioned, Premat to bring back our monsters. Volcanic Rocket didn't only activate on normal summon, it activates on any summon, so you can use it to sell Premat, or you can use it as a flip summon off of Book of Moon. We got Snap Steal here to take control of our opponent's monsters. We got Wildfire. This is basically a board wipe by sending a Blaze Accelerator you control, so that's pretty good. And it does leave you with a 1000 attack point monster after the whole thing's said and done, too, which is not that bad. We got a Call the Haunted here to bring back our monsters. We've got a Max Cylinder to bounce back our opponent's attacks. We've got a Mind Crush here to rip apart their hand in addition to triple Trap Dust Shoot. I do like Mind Crush in this format a lot. And, you know, while our deck didn't have too many ways of looking at the hand, just the Dust Shoots and the Confies, I think it's just better to pre-side against some decks that could give us a bit of trouble. We've got a Mirror Force Ring and a TT to curb our opponent's aggressive pressure. And also the Ring of Destruction can be used to deal that last bit of burn damage that we need to finish off the game. For the side deck, we got a couple different options here. We got triple Decree to stop our opponent's traps. We've got a Jinzo as well for that purpose. We've got triple Dust Shoot and a Heavy Storm along with triple Mobius for back row focused decks. We've got a Nox to deal with their set monsters, and we got triple DD Crow for graveyard shenanigans. For the extra deck, we're never going to this. I just put a bunch of Fire Fusions here because we got a fire deck to show off today. So without further ado, let's dive into some games to see how this deck actually plays. We got our first game here against the World of Dark Arm God. If you can get some channel, always a pleasure to have them on. We're going to be diving in to the games here, and this will be a good illustration of what this deck can do when it's firing on all cylinders. So we've got a pretty good hand. We got the Accelerator and the Shell in hand. Unfortunately, the Rocket is kind of a nombo with the Accelerator because we only play one. Maybe an argument to play two, but also we can just save the Rocket for when we want to get back that Accelerator after our opponent pops it. So I feel pretty fine about this. Our opponent's starting off. They're just going to set 3 and pass back to us. We draw a Call the Haunted, which is not bad. We could just go Rocket and attack in. But the issue with that, in my opinion, is that then they could go like Cyber Dragon into other stuff. And I do feel like they probably have some Cyber Dragons in hand, given that, they didn't commit anything to board here. They could just be playing around our own Cyber Dragons. But I don't just want to like summon out a Rocket for no value and then attack in for some damage. Sure, it does set up Spirit of Flames. Sure, we already have the Shell and the Accelerator in hand, so I guess we could go for that. We also do have Call the Haunted to bring back Rocket if we need to bring it back and stuff. But I think it's actually better just to wait, see what they do. If they can't do anything, again, then we can maybe do a push on a later turn. But I feel like it is actually better here just to think about it and just pass. We don't want to commit the call or the Blade Accelerator to bait into like MST or something, or Dust Tornado. I guess we could set the Blade Accelerator to do that because we do have the Rocket. So maybe actually would have been better just to set the Blade Accelerator as a bluff and see what happened there. But I mean, ultimately, I think this hand's fine as is. We don't really need to push a ton here. And the deck can generally play a bit slowly. Our opponent's just going to pass back to us, and we draw a Volcanic Slicer. So that I am fine bringing out because it doesn't give value on normal summon. So it can just serve as an 1800 body if we want to attack in with it, and does set up our Spirit of Flame into Thestalos play on a following turn. We're just going to pass back to our opponent. They're going to bring out these Siders. So they didn't need to have that. And they're also going to bring out a Winged Rhino. So it seems like our opponent is playing a Winged Rhino style deck. I featured this deck previously on the channel in Trooper format. I don't really think it's the best deck in the world. I think it has some major problems. But it is still a deck that you can potentially play if you want to try and make it work. But now that they got monsters, we can go for Blade Accelerator here, and we will use this effect targeting the Rhynos, seeing if that's okay. Now, fun fact about Blade Accelerator, it doesn't send for cost, so you can still target a, monster your opponent controls and see what happens. Of course, I do believe you still have to send after the targeting, so, we'll send for effect, but if your opponent does MST this thing, you won't have to pitch the Shell. Although we might actually want to pitch Shell to just get that part of our deck going here. But they're just going to let that go through, letting the Rhynos die. And if it had fizzled, we would have been able to use Shell to grab another Shell and then pop the Sidra. So that's why I'm kind of fine doing this. So I'm just going to grab another Shell from deck, use that Accelerator to get rid of the Sidra there, and grab another Shell. If they had bounced the Rhinos somehow, then we could have potentially summoned out Spirit of Flames, distributed for Thestalos, and tried to snipe the Rhinos from hand. That could have been an option. But since that didn't happen, I'm just going to set a Gravekeeper Spy and then set a Call the Haunted, pass back to them. I feel like they don't have MST, or they probably would have used it on the Accelerator, so I'm fine just going for this play instead. They are going to think about the set 1, pass back to us. We draw Wildfire, which is pretty nice. It can blow up the whole board if we need it to. And we're going to flip a Gravekeeper Spy here. We're going to another Spy in attack mode here. And now we're going to attack in for 2400. I don't really feel like I need to commit anything yet. I'll just see what they do first, because they got 4 back rows. So it's probably some live things there. They activate a Widespread Ruin, which will get rid of one of our Spies. And they're going to chain a MST to that, hitting the Blade Accelerator. We're fine with that. We get value off the Rocket now. We're going to attack in for 12, and then main 2, I am just going to tribute the Spy for a Thestalos to try and rip a card out of their hand. If they got another Sidra, this plays well into that, and also gets the Thestalos in rotation for our Call the Haunted to bring it back later. So we will rip apart their hand a little bit here, taking away that Shrink. And, I mean, that's pretty good. They could get over our Thestalos with the Shrink, so I'm okay taking that. They're going to set 1 pass back to us. We draw into Pot of Avarice here. And we do indeed have 5 monsters in the graveyard, so we could potentially use that, especially since we do have a Shell in hand to pair with our Blade Accelerator when we get back with the Rocket. There is an argument not to do this, though, because we do have Spirit of Flames here, which can be used as further extension and potentially a lethal push if we wanted to. But, you know, I decide the value on Avarice is good enough to go for it, and I could potentially draw into a way to push for lethal here anyways, or just draw into more value, because we probably do have this game locked up realistically, so I don't think it will really be the worst thing in the world to do this. And I just draw into 2 more fire monsters, so not really the best thing in the world. We summon out a Rocket, they go for Ring, and they will book down our Rocket and Ring our Thestalos. So we do lose the Thestalos, and they will activate Accumulated Fortune as the Chain Link 4. Now, the nice thing here is that we do know that they are out of, you know, back row here. So that means that we can get a clean shot in. But this, again, is where I went wrong with the Pot of Avarice, because I wanted to sort of draw more ways to normal summon or do something with my monsters here. I wanted to get the most options available with the Avarice, but I actually cut myself off of a couple options, because while we can bring out Spirit of Flames now, it is probably better just to bring back the Thestalos and do something with that. And if we do that, we can't bring out the Spirit of Flames. So it is pretty awkward for us here. We do get back that Blaze Accelerator, but Blaze Accelerator can only target monsters your opponent controls, and also you can't attack the turn you use it. So it does make things a bit tricky for us. So I should not have gone for the Avarice. I should have held off on that, but I was a bit greedy with that. We can still drop them down to 200. We're probably going to win this one, but it is what it is. We're just going to set a Wildfire and that Blaze Accelerator there. If they've got Heavy Storm, they got Heavy Storm. I don't probably want to chain Wildfire to that. But if they do mount some offensive, or if they like Snatch Steal to go for a big monster push here, then there are, you know, reasons why we'd want to have a board wipe set on field. They're going to bring out a Sidra there and then go for a Heavy Storm after going for the Sidra. Very interesting sequencing there. I am actually going to go for the Wildfire here, since it seems like they're a bit late on monsters. They have special summoned the Sidra, so they haven't normal summoned yet. So they could potentially summon something out to beat over the token here. But if they do, it probably won't deal 2,000 damage, unless, like, well, yeah, Lily can't even do anything here because they've only got 200 life points. So I feel pretty safe with this, and I can just attack in with this next turn. Unfortunately, they do have Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, so that we'll be able to banish 2 cards from our graveyard here. And that's going to be a bit rough for us. We got to get a little bit creative if we want to get over that thing. We're going to go for a Rocket here, and we're going to grab a Blaze Accelerator there. Instead of attacking in with the Rocket into the Kaiku, which could have disastrous results if, for instance, they have, like, Shrink here to shrink down our Rocket, and then take, like, how much would I take? I'd take 850 there, which we'd still be alive, but it would not be a good spot to be in, especially if we want to trigger more shells. So I'd rather just go for the Blaze Accelerator here, pop the Kaiku, and then just sit on this. Potentially go for a Spirit of the Flames to, you know, block a Snatch Steal play here, but I ultimately decided not to do that. I also was deciding on whether to activate the shell or not, because I am very low in life, but I figure Ring is gone, so I don't need to worry about that. And if they've got some other way to deal damage to us, the 500 is probably not going to be the make or break. So I'm just going to do that and pass back to them. I think in hindsight, I should have gone for Spirit of Flames here, summoning that thing out, and sort of giving myself a buffer to prevent them from doing a Snatch Steal play or something. But unfortunately, I did not do that. So they're going to go for Jar of Greed here, drawing a card, summing out Rhynos, and just passing on that. So I feel very fine about this. We draw Ring of Destruction for turn, which is incredibly good here, because it enables us to potentially push for a draw if they do have a way to get around a lethal play on our part. But we're going to banish a shell, go for a Spirit of Flames here, and this is also very nice because if they do have Shrink, then we actually don't lose by attacking Spirit of Flames into the Winged Rhynos here, because the Spirit of Flames will go down to 850 and gain that 300 boost in the battle phase. So this will be at 1150, and we'll actually take 650 damage, so we actually will be right out of that range that would cause us to lose the game here. So I do feel safe just going for a lethal push here, and it looks like we will indeed win the game. It seems like they just had a dead ultimate offering there, and that will be all she wrote. So pretty interesting game 1 there. Very, very down to the wire in the end, but we were able to pull it out there. Let's dive into game 2 here. I sided in some Royal Decrees because I felt like Royal Decrees would be very good. I sided out like Dust Shoots. I think I kept in the Mind Crush though because it hit Rhynos. But I did side out the Dust Shoots because I felt like if they're setting a ton of cards all the time, then they're probably not going to have a bunch in hand. And also it sort of conflicts with the Decrees. So we want to take out as many traps as we feel are necessary when we get Decree in the deck. So that's what we did. This is a pretty good hand. We're going to MST their back row because we want to try and land the Sidra. But like I could have potentially held the MST here for things like Snatch Steal or something. But I do want to make sure my aggressive push goes through. yeah, I don't know. This was potentially an iffy play, but I figured at least one of those back row was live. One of it might have been a chainable, and if we hit a chainable anyways, they'd chain it to decree, so it wouldn't really matter that much there. But I maybe should have saved that for a more high-value target. But we do hit an Offerings to the Doom there, so I'm happy about that because that could have stopped the Cyber Dragon play going on here. And I'm going to go for a Sidra here and summon out a Volcanic Slicer and just try and get in for a ton of damage. And also just clear that Kaiku so then our Spirit of Flames is online. Because I want the Spirit of Flames online for Monarch plays, things like that. And really the only thing that stops us here is Mirror Force exactly, because even if they have a Shrink or a Widespread for the Cyber Dragon, we can attack in and crash with these Slicers. So I do feel like this is pretty good, and luckily we do manage to get in with everything, so I feel pretty good about that. We're going to set a Royal Decree here, pass back to them, and they're going to set 1, set 2, set 3, and that's exactly what we want to see when we get a Decree set. We're going to flip this Decree, pass back to, or they pass back to us. We're going to go for a Sang in here, attack in for 1,000, plus 18, plus 21, and that'll drop them down to 1,000 life points, so we're feeling very good about that. We set a Book of Moon here and pass back to them. They're going to go for a Heavy Storm, blowing up everything, but they kind of have to at this point because they need to clear this Decree somehow. And we are going to book down our Sangan just in case. I mean, if they've got Knock at the last card in hand, I don't care about that. But seeing that they're just going to pass back to us, kind of interesting that they did that. They just had a DD Crow here. I probably even wouldn't have heavied because, you know, your traps are offline anyways, but like, you know, if you don't have a background to set as a bluff, you might as well have them as bluffs, right? But I mean, we were going to win either way here because the only thing we really feared is like Mirror Force. We're just going to go for Thessalos just to add insult to injury and then attack in for well over lethal damage. So that's going to be the end of this game here. And, you know, Volcanic Monarch putting on a pretty good showing. Of course, you know, Winged Rhynos is not the most competitive deck in this format, but it is kind of cool to see this deck, you know, doing what it does best and, you know, popping things with the accelerators and also getting those Monarchs out. And, you know, we'll just have to see if it can actually do the same thing against a more meta threat. Okay, we got a game here against Yammerman, if you can get to the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. And they are playing the more meta threat that I mentioned in the end of last game. Let's see if we can actually manage to acquit ourselves well against this deck here. And see if we can do the same thing we did in match 1. This is a pretty good hand to start out with. We did draw a duplicate spy, but we do have a third in deck to bring out, so we can go for that. We are going to special summon out this Sidra. And then we're going to set a Mind Crush, set a Spy, and attack in. Now, I do it this way because I do know that Yammerman is fond of playing Baboon Burn. So I figure that if that's a Koala or if that's a Morphing Jar, I want to just get things out of my hand, right? Unfortunately for us, it's a Momonga, and they will be able to bring out the Green Baboon, Defender of the Forest. Apparently, it did work this way at the time. I checked with them, and they said that it does. And they've played this deck a lot more than I have. So, you know, they would know that a lot better than I would. So they're going to go for the Baboon. They're going to MST our back row, which is a Mind Crush, which doesn't really do anything against their deck, so I'm perfectly fine with this. And we're in a bit of a tough spot. They're going to go for Cat here, and they're going to tribute for that, bringing out double Gyaku Gire Panda, which is a bit awkward for us. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, because they can attack in the Spy here, and that does bring out another Spy to buff up one of the Pandas, but we can still at least wall off against most of their attacks here. So they are able to hit over that one, dealing us 300, and then they're able to hit over the Sidra, dealing us 500, but this is a much better outcome than we might have expected otherwise here. We draw into a Ring of Destruction, which is pretty good here. We set a Spy, set the Ring, pass back to them, because I can sort of wall up on this, and that's still not enough for a Panda to hit over our stuff. They go for a Baboon over a Spy. We will ring that, and that will indeed go through. We'll both take 2,600, and then they'll set one, pass back to us. We draw a Book of Moon here, so we can set down a Panda if they summon that out, and we'll set the Spirit Reaper to wall up even further in case they've got like a knock plus some way to deal with this Spy. Maybe not the most likely case, but I do think it is good to do this, especially when we do have a Book of Moon to set down a Panda that they might bring out. They're going to go for Ceasefire here, so that's a lot of damage though, so maybe it wasn't the smartest thing to set into a deck that does a lot of burn, but we are kind of on the back foot, so I felt like it was good just to sort of have more monsters on field than less. They'll go for a Heavy Storm here. We'll set down the Graveyard Spy just in case, but they do have the Panda to be lethal damage here. Now, I think we were kind of in a tough spot either way. I mean, to be fair, like, if we just had the two Spies here, the Panda couldn't get over that. But the moment that one of these beast monsters died, they'd be able to bring back the Baboon, and we don't really have a good way to deal with that. So we were kind of in a really, really rough spot, and we've got 1,600 life points. They're a burn deck, so they probably have some way to kill us before we actually get into what we want to do, especially since the shells deal 500 each. So I do think I misplayed here by setting the Reaper, but I also think that we were not winning this game either way. So we're going to go into game 2 and see what we do here. And we are going to be going first this time. I do side accordingly, so I take out the Mind Crush. I take out the Dust Shoots as well. Yeah, maybe the Dust Shoots are not good to main, but I think there are a fair amount of decks in the meta that they do hit well. It's just when you're up against decks like this that they can be a bit awkward here. But we're going to set a Spy, set an MST, pass back to them. See what they do here. They're going to go for a Rhoda to go for an Exile to pop our Spy, which is a bit unfortunate for us. We kind of wanted that Spy to go through. But nothing we can really do there. And we do draw into a Shell, which is going to make this Rocket Search for an Accelerator a lot better here. Because now we've got the fodder for the Accelerator, and we can go for that. We're going to attack in for 1,900 and pass back to them. And see what they do. They're going to go for a Panda here, which is very worrying. When they normal summon a Panda into a monster with a bigger attack than the Panda, they probably have a trio lined up as well. So they're going to go for the trio there. And they're going to fill up our board with a ton of monsters, buffing that Panda up to 2,800 and attacking over the Rocket to deal 900 damage. This isn't the worst thing in the world, but it is kind of awkward. We will have to use our Blade Accelerator on this, so we will do that. Pitching a Shell, popping the Panda, and I do forget that I can't attack him with Reaper, but actually normal summoning the Reaper might have been the move, just in case they do have another Panda that is 100 less damage, but I think that that's Cope trying to make a misplay seem like not a misplay, but this definitely was a misplay, because if they don't have a Panda, which they very well might not, you know, they've used up one already. If they don't have a Panda, then it's better for us to have this in defense. And also just the uncertainty there of what it is might cause them to structure their plays a bit differently. So, but yeah, I can't attack in with the Reaper with that Accelerator up, but I can pay 5 to go for a Shell just to get that online. This is a bit risky against a burn deck, but I figure if that 500 is the make or break, I'm probably losing the game either way. So I'm just going to search out that Shell and pass back to them. They've got the second counter on Wave Motion, or I guess technically there aren't counters on that, but either way, it's pretty decent here. We're going to go for MST on the back row, not the Wave Motion. You might be wondering why this is, but the reason for this is because Ryza can deal with the Wave Motion pretty effectively as well. If we spin back the Wave Motion after it has a couple counters on it, they have to rebuild those counters there and sort of do that to get the burn damage off on the cannon. So I figure it's better just hit their unknown back row. That could disrupt our plays here. So we're going to tribute for Thespilos here because we want to hit a Baboon if they have that, just so we know about it. And then we can also pop the Baboon with the Accelerator after pitching a Shell, because we do have one more Shell left in deck. So we're going to hit a DD Warrior Lady there, dealing 400. I'm pretty happy about that as well. We're going to pitch a Shell, popping that Momonga there, which I'm very happy to get rid of. And now we'll add another Shell for 500. We'll set the Wildfire just in case, and then pass back to our opponent here. They are going to set one, pass back to us. We draw into a Snatch Deal here. And I'm just going to tribute the Thespilos for the Ryza. We know that TT is gone, so I don't really need to worry about that. The warrior here would be Mirror Force, I guess. But if they do have Mirror Force, we want to have... I mean, we wouldn't bring out the Ryza anyways, because we don't have a tribute fodder on field, right? They need to normal summon into a Snatch Deal to set that up, or we'd have to set our Shell, which I don't really want to do. So, if it's Mirror Force, we're kind of in the same spot either way, but summoning the Ryza does set them back a turn by putting the cannon back on top of the deck. So, I do feel like this is the best play there. There's a punish of pulling the rug if they're on pulling the rug in this game too, but I don't think they saw the Monarch stuff in game 1, so I don't think they should be expecting that here. So, they could have brought it in for the Rocket, but again, I don't really think they saw that element of the deck game 1. So they go for Wave Motion Cannon here, just trying to reestablish it. We'll attack him for 24. We don't really need to commit the Ryza just yet. They're going to set one, pass back to us, and we had connection issue on DB. We're drawing Spirit of Flames, which is pretty good, and again, I'm going to go for Ryza, but this time I'm going to target the monster, because if that back row is nothing, and they haven't been using it the past couple turns, so it likely is nothing, then we just win the game here. And it looks like that was indeed a heavy storm, so we will indeed be able to win that game there. So, pretty good turn of events for us there. We're going to go into game 3 here, keeping the deck largely the same, and let's see if we can manage to work our magic yet again. Our opponent's going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw into a Heavy Storm. We could go Heavy Storm here, but I don't really think I need to on just basically one lone back row. We're just going to summon a Slicer and then set a Ring, pass back to them. If it was MST, then it's MST, but then our pre-mat's online for later, so I'm okay if they MST hit the ring. Although ring does protect us against certain edge cases here. They're going to go for Snatch Fuel because I know that they don't play many tribute monsters. I'm not going to ring this. If they do tribute, they probably will tribute into a Baboon, which I'm fine ringing because 1, they can't bring back Baboon off of Baboon destruction, and 2, it gets that monster out of the way and also tells us that they've got it, right? So I'm going to give them the Slicer there and let that go through. They go for a Rat attack and a Slicer attack. I will ring the Rat because the Rat is kind of pesky here, so we'll get rid of that, and they'll still be able to attack us in for 18 plus the 14 for the ring, and they still have a normal summon, so they can set 1 card here. We do draw Rocket, which is very, very good here. So we go for Heavy Storm on the back row. Honestly, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gone Heavy Storm here just yet, but the reason why I do this is because I don't want my Accelerator to wind up in Graveyard just yet. But I think actually it might have been better just to keep gaining 1,000 off the Slicer if they can't deal with the Rocket here. Because what we can do is just summon out Rocket, activate Blade Accelerator, pitch the shell, pop the set, and then just pass back to them after search get another shell. If they can't deal with the Rocket, then that Slicer is 500 a turn, but we're gaining 1,000 on each of our turns, and we do have the Heavy Storm for later to pop that Snatch Steal. So I do think it probably would have been better to hold the Heavy. The downside to this is if they've got Pulling the Rug set, right? So if they had Pulling the Rug set, then not having there would be a major bad move for us. But worst case scenario, we could always just Heavy the Snatch and take back the Slicer as a bit of defense there. But it definitely would have been a lot worse because we wouldn't necessarily been able to pop the set monster here. So I will decide to pop the set monster there, getting rid of the set. And you might be thinking, okay, well, if you're activating Blade Accelerator, you should activate the Heavy first, so that way you can keep your Blade Accelerator online. But, you know, I do have other rockets in the deck. I've got pre-mat to bring back this rocket, so I don't actually think it's that big of a deal if we Heavy Storm our own Accelerator. And that's one of the powers of this deck that can make your opponent play against it a bit awkwardly. Because if they see the Accelerator up, they might be like, okay, they're not going to activate Heavy because they don't want to get rid of their own card. But it actually is very easy to just get rid of the Accelerator and bring it back in this deck. So, yeah, I think in hindsight, I probably should have held the Heavy, but I didn't, and that was a mistake on my part. Yeah, I guess that would be the worst case scenario if they had Pulling. We just hit pre-map back the Rocket, and then we're in a really good spot. So, yeah, I think either way, I should have held the Heavy there for a better play later. But our opponent's going to go for a pre-mat here, bring back a Giant Rat, and then they're going to crash into our Slicer there. So they'll take 4, but they are able to bring out a Panda here and then attack into one of our tokens. So we will take a fair amount of damage there, taking 2,600. And then they will set 2 and activate Level Limit Area B. So everything switches to defense, and that's going to be very awkward against that Panda. Of course, we can pop the Panda with our Blade Accelerator here, but they do have Ring. We will book down the Panda. And now I'm actually unclear if this will still pop the Panda there. But either way, I mean, we can activate Blade Accelerator again later this turn. So we'd still be getting rid of the Panda no matter what. But I asked my opponent what they think, and they think that it still does destroy it. So we're just going to play with that ruling. If it's wrong, let us know in the comments down below. But since we are just stalled out here, we're just going to use the Slicer effect to deal 500 and then just pass back to them. We're in a pretty awkward spot here, and there are some weird edge cases where paying that 500 can actually kill us now. Like if they go for Panda here, attack into a token, Panda will have 2,800, so that's 18 plus 300, so that's 2,100, so we'd still be actually alive at 100 life points. So I guess that isn't the best example, but I do feel like getting down to very, very low situations, which we are in, the shell might not be the best to use right now, but it probably would have been better just to use the shell there. They're going to go for Exiled on our Slicer there, and we draw into Rhynos. This gives us a bit of a decision to make here. We could potentially tribute out the Rhynos, spin something back just to set them back a turn, because if they do draw into Panda, we are in a very, very bad spot. I think ultimately what I decided to do is I try and get a bit aggressive here. And I do think in hindsight, this is the right play because again, if they draw into Panda, we just lose the game. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go Rhynos, spin back the level limit, and then we're going to pre-map back the Slicer to attack in for 1,800 this turn. And they're drawing level limit next turn, switching the Slicer to defense, but then we get that 500 every turn. They'll be down to 2,100 here, so this is a bit of a clock on them. So if we can fade a couple of draw steps or potentially draw some defense in the meantime, we could potentially still pull our way out of this. We did side in the knock for like Momongas and stuff. I do think that's the right move, but unfortunately it did not come out pretty well for us here. We draw into Rocket, which, you know, we're not going to be using here. We're just going to use the Slicer, pass back to them, and unfortunately, they do draw into the Panda there. So their deck had many ways to access Panda, so it wasn't the least likely thing in the world for them to draw that. And actually, they did have a set called the Haunted there, so they would be able to bring back the Panda in their graveyard either way there. But yeah, I think if we had played this differently, held the heavy, we would have actually been able to win this game, potentially. Maybe not, though, because they did have Exiled Force later. They also did have Premat into Rat into Panda, so that might have screwed us over either way. But I do think that, like, as long as we survived that initial push, as long as we have the Heavy Storm to blow up their back row or blow up their level limit, we are in a very, very good position here. But that's how it goes sometimes. And again, hindsight's 2020. So in the moment, was that the right play to make? I think in hindsight, like, if I had more experience with the deck and was thinking a bit more about it, then yes, it would have been the right play to make. But it's always tough to tell in the moment. So I try not to be too hard on myself in these replays, but also I try and learn for the future and just see what I can do better and, you know, improve on later on. But I hope you liked this video and liked seeing this deck in action. I think it's a very, very cool deck. And I think this engine is one that you can continue playing in later formats as well. Maybe don't play the Slicer, but I think that the Blade Accelerator plus Rocket plus Shell Engine is pretty decent and can see some play. Now, is it the best way to play Monarchs? I don't know about that, but it is a pretty fun way to play it. And so I definitely encourage you to experiment with it a bit if you want to. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed as always. If you want to play Trooper format games for yourself, then head on over to the Discord server, linked in the description down below. We also hold monthly tournaments there. Next month's tournament will be in zombie format, which I will be starting to cover later this week. Now, my current sort of broadcast schedule here, since I covered this video, tomorrow is going to be another Wheel Wednesday. And then on Thursday, since I've been slacking a bit on my tournament coverage, there are actually a lot of great tournaments that I need to report the results on. And I figure it can tie into Thanksgiving because I am thankful for the retro community as a whole that we've managed to grow here. And so I figure what better way to give thanks than to go over some awesome tournament results. So I'll be doing that on Thursday. And then on Friday, I'm aiming to get out that zombie format video, just going over the new cards in it and talking about what changes from Trooper to it. So look forward to that. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see when those videos come out. And also, big shouts to my patrons, Rinsman, Porkchop, Brent Knocker, Tyler Compton, GeoMyFest, Dump Truck, and Scout Zero. It means a lot that you all support me, but I encourage you to make more videos like this one in the future. I hope you all enjoyed as always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGF from Zero. I'm signing off.